Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the short notice in getting this one out. I actually kind of forgot what day we were on. It's been a minute or two since we've actually kind of done a bit of chatting on the Friday. So, look, as I said on Discord, we'll probably just try and keep it Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcenter, obviously, Solana, have a look at some dominance charts. Let's just try and get a flavor for a feel for where things are. And I think covering those four will be fine. If anyone does have any burning alts I want me to have a look at as well, feel free to drop them in the chat, and if we've got time at the end, I'll definitely do that. For those of you that saw Tuesday, you're looking here on Bitcoin on the weekly time frame. I'm just showing this again just to kind of emphasize there's no real concern to be had at the moment. And I've zoomed out a bit because I want you to see the two previous bull markets as well. But actually, I'll zoom in to start off with. Bitcoin in this run up still just sort of, just not aggressively, just sort of nicely moving, snaking up along the EMAs at the moment, particularly a nice bounce off that 20 EMA. But we haven't lost the 50 EMA, and there's no real concern until we do. But I just want to emphasize on the two previous cycles. So, and the point really is, you look at the 2017 peak and then the fall away. It was an aggressive fall from the peak after the first couple of weeks, okay? A real strong move all the way back down. Similarly, in the double peak there, big falls straight off, okay, not down as far as the indicators are gone, but large, quick moves down, signifying there's a shift in temperament within the market. And we haven't got there yet. So, whilst we may be thinking that the 4-year cycle is coming to an end sometime soon, right now, we made a high, but we haven't had a huge sell-off from that high. We're still, sort of battling up against it. And I would argue that we are primed for Bitcoin's next run up to retest 124,500, probably getting above 125,000, setting a new all-time high. And unless there's a major shift in sort of sentiment and major shift in the candle charts, then, or the chart candle, should I say, then I'm not concerned. Appreciate that we're here for charting, so we want to be on a lower time frame. But I just wanted to start off with that one at the moment and just reiterate the point that I've been making for a few weeks now. We may be close to the end, if you believe in the 4-year cycle, but the charts are suggesting that we're not there yet. So we can still hang on and see where things are going. Let's get down onto some lower time frames and have something that's a bit more sensible there. Bitcoin at the moment, daily time frame here. So we made the all-time highs we talked about middle of August. We then had that correction into the beginning of September. And since the 1st of September, we found a bottom and we've managed to climb ourselves back up. What is interesting, daily time frame, as I suggested, is, and this will look better on the far, but we've made a bottom here. We've moved up, and then as we've approached that 50 EMA a couple of days ago, we actually were able to break through that with increased volume, vector candle forming, showing that there is strength from there. And then, granted today hasn't finished, but yesterday's price action taking us all the way up to sort of 115,700. And then the early hours of this morning, we did get up to 116,000 and beyond. We are seeing obviously a retracement from that, but that is where we currently found ourselves. So daily time frame, strong move up there. Nice that we found that bottoming pattern. And as I said, concerned that we were just running up and into the 50 EMA, but we did find the strength to get through. So I'm going to have to call it short term because we're talking about a couple of months, but even in this move here, this is a positive sign to see. Could we retest and fall back down to the 50 EMA? I think that's highly likely, to be perfectly honest with you. But we can kind of see that the 50 EMA, about 113,000, then the 10 and the 20, around about 112,000. Now, those 10 and 20 are going to creep up pretty fast as the days progress. And I would expect over the next 2 days, probably by the back end of the weekend, they will already be above the 50 EMA. But, a retest, a Kobo, whatever you'd like to call it, back to the 50 EMA is not the end of the world. As long as we can keep it, above the 50 EMA, obviously. If the 20 and the 10 are below the 50 EMA at the time that we come down to retest it, as long as we stick around those, and I think this is just a classic kind of retest, we'll sweep back. You're going to see some vector candles on the lower time frames. Prime for the weekend where it's just crypto, making the moves before we head into next week. And let me just reiterate again what next week is. Next week is FOMC meeting. It's a foregone conclusion that we're going to get a rate cut. I think people are just trying to determine the size of the rate cut. 25 basis points is what is anticipated at the moment. There's an argument to be made that has already been priced in. So if we do get 25 basis points, yes, we may see some volatility. Maybe it doesn't move as much. If we see 50, then I think sentiment is going to move. Now, my wider views on that is what I talked about on Tuesday, so go back and have a look through those. But if we start to see big moves there, I think people are going to get very excited. Maybe a little early to get excited, but I think they will, and I think we may see another strong move there. But things are gearing in the right direction for where we need to be next week. Between now and Wednesday, maybe we do see a little bit of chop. But as I say, as long as that chop stays above 113,000, I think Bitcoin is in a good place to be. Let's drop onto some lower time frames and zoom out a little bit. So this is where I was talking before. So we made the all-time high middle of August. I'm trying to get it onto the screen so you can see it all. Stopping vector. Well, it wasn't a vector candle, but high test into that, and then just constant falling all the way back down. Caught ourselves on the 4 hour at the 800 EMA, and we actually formed a pretty good double bottom formation there. And then we just have a look at the counts. Well, what's happened since then? So we've had that move up. I'm going to take it all the way up to the 200 EMA with this red vector candle as one move. I know we dipped back down, but I do not believe that this second one was a second leg. I think this is the move. So that's rise one, if you will. We then have this chop here in and around the 50 EMA, taking us to around about Tuesday this week. And then what have we seen? We've seen, one vector candle down, but vector candle up. I appreciate it's small, but there is, increased volume breaking through the 50 EMA and then continuing to move up. This to me feels like rise two. If I draw that there, should have got my pen out and written it. So we've got a rise one and a rise two. What do we usually expect? We expect to see three of these. So it's highly likely, we don't know when the rise is going to end, particularly running into a weekend, but we would expect at some stage a period of consolidation, maybe a retest. And we talk about vector candles. Well, we've got two blocks here. We've got a little one in and around the 113,800. And then we've got this main one here, which is sort of 113,000, which is where the 50 EMA is on the daily time frame. Or you could have a look at the bottom of this vector candle, which is where the 10 and the 20 EMA on the daily time frame kind of tie in. So that's what I'm talking about. Maybe we do see that move back down to the 50 EMA. Maybe we see a wick below on the lower time frames, taking out these vector candles. But if we do, nothing necessarily too much to worry about. So for me, if we're just doing it on rise counts, we don't actually really have to get worried that we've broken structure, probably until we lose, I'll draw a line on it, probably until we lose here, and we lose that vector down there, 110,800, let's call it. We lose that, we've kind of broken the structure of the rises there. But what I would expect is a rise up, and it feeds into the fact, and let me just get rid of these rise counts here, just so we can start dealing again. But it feeds into the fact that we may get, a move down here, it's fine. But then look what's up there for us to take. More vector candles, more targets to go to, and an opportunity to work up towards those. And there's a pretty decent amount of volumes trapped within those levels. Now, again, we do have to break through that 118,000 level, which is, been pretty difficult for us to get to. But again, we can get through that. I think things are going to look pretty good. I'll leave the doodles on, drop it down onto the 1 hour time frame. If it gets messy, I'll get rid of it. But I think it kind of still says the same picture, really. Let me just try and get this in as best I can. This is where the double bottom was, and it's a classic double bottom, really, isn't it? Price drops back down, bounces back up, it hits the exact same level again, and then we make that move. So, really convincing people that we were going to fall further, and then we just get it taken out from us, especially on the 1st of September. And an interesting one there in terms of September being a pretty bad month historically. If this is the bottom of the month, that's going to catch a lot of people out, yours truly included. But we are where we are with those ones there. So I think Bitcoin, for me, it's in a great position. It's looking strong, and I ultimately wouldn't bet against it from a dollar value. Now we're going to move into some altcoins here, and actually the Bitcoin dominance is probably going to suggest that betting against it with other cryptos might be an area of concern. I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me a second. It was a double sneeze, but at least I muted the microphone. Anyway, okay, right. Let's move on to Ethereum. Let's take that onto the daily time frame. Let's have a look at what we can see with Ethereum. Hello, Jean. Just seen your comment. Okay, so Ethereum's had that massive move up through July that we've talked about. We cleared, made a new all-time high, absolute celebration, and then we had that correction. And it's been a bit of an interesting correction because we haven't even corrected to the 50 EMA. But what we have seen is sort of this sort of cup, this bottoming, rounding bottom kind of pattern with really small candles, wicks above, north and south of them, but certainly almost an element of manipulation of that price there and just not letting it get out of those ranges. And the amount of candles we had opening and closing in and around that 4,300 level kind of suggests to us that people were trying to control that price. And again, on Tuesday, we sort of suggested we are getting squeezed here. We're expecting that move. The move has currently happened to the upside. But what is interesting is it's not with increased volume. We've just been able to find that momentum getting through. I won't bother showing you. There's not that much buying of ETF Ethereum on the ETFs, but there is a little bit. They are black days. But yeah, so on the daily time frame, just hugging the 10 and the 20 EMA, finding some sort of correction from there, starting to move back up. And for me, even if it's not an all-time high question this weekend, with how price moves over the weekend, taking on those two vector candles, I think, I mean, it may even happen today, but I'd be surprised if we don't at least take the pink vector candle and maybe even work to the top of that, which would be around about 4,800. I mean, from that point there, we're so close to the all-time high, and that 5,000 level is such a psychological level now. I think that's perhaps where the move is going to go. When we drop down onto the 4-hour time frame, again, there's not a huge amount really to see. We can kind of see this movement and what was happening, how we were getting squeezed. 50 EMA to the 200 EMA, just squeezing us, and we had to have it. And this is what we wanted to see. Green vector candle busting through it. Okay, immediately retraced, but it gave us, the green flag, if you will, green lights for it to go. And we can actually see on the 4 hours, it's looking like a much stronger move through that 50 EMA. And where did this one get to yesterday, or the early hours of this morning? 4,560, but not too much of a retrace from that. We're still sitting within this vector candle zone there. And as I said, that 4,800, yes, okay, we may pull back during the next 48 hours to get to that, but I think that march up to that level is where what I would anticipate Ethereum is ultimately looking to go. I might as well talk about Ethereum versus BTC whilst we're on it. So I've cheated here. I've gone to a different chart, I've cleaned it up a little bit, and I'm now on the linear time frame, but this is something that I've shown plenty of times before. This is the 2-year, on the weekly time frame, 2-year resistance line for Ethereum. And what can you see? We broke through it a couple of weeks ago, celebrations, absolutely. But what's happening now? We've retraced to it, and then I need 2 days to go. But we're looking like we've hit it, and we're starting that move back up there. And I think one more green candle off this is going to convince us that actually we've had that retest and it's time to move north. And so, for those of you that want to play the Bitcoin into Ethereum and then into large cap alts, I think this is kind of the confirmation that you really need to be taken there, and just to bear that one going through. If we have a look at, I'll do Bitcoin dominance at the end. We don't think we really need to look at the Ethereum BTC on the daily or the weekly time frame. I think this tells us the picture that we've been waiting to see. If you want to be patient and just wait for this candle to close, just to make sure that that's the case. But given there's only 2.5 days of this to go, looking quite strong in terms of that retest confirmation. And then up we go. Targets that I'd then be looking at, we'll do a fib in a second, but I'll be looking at 0.05 because we just had so much internet activity in and around here. But if we draw a fib, let's have a look, see where it goes. It is on the linear, so I might have to then get rid of the line and do it on the log afterwards, but we'll see what happens. Let's go wick to wick because it's such a long time period. I mean, I didn't look at this beforehand. I don't know if you're going to believe me on that one, but I really didn't. But just look at it wick to wick. So it's come down, it's hit the 382, come back down. Now we're testing the support again. And if we can get that move up, look, the 382, retesting that. And then, as I said, that 0.52 kind of area ties in with the 0.5 Fibonacci level, and then the 618, which would be great if we can get up to there in and around 0.06. So they would be my long-term times. I'm going to rephrase that. It's not long-term time frames. They would be my targets for Ethereum. What you got to remember, and we talked about this again on Tuesday, was the rotation out of Bitcoin into Ethereum is kind of the starting gun for the end of the 4-year cycle, if that's what it's going to be. And so we may not have that much time left, 10, 12 weeks, whatever it may be. So when I'm talking long term now, I'm actually thinking, from 4 years ago, end of the next cycle. Really, we should be saying short term to medium term, end of the year is kind of what we're looking at. So I'll try and correct myself on that, but generally that's what I'm talking about if it slips out again. Right, okay. Let's have a look at BitTensor. We'll go on the daily time frame. We'll have a look at where things are going. So get rid of that. We don't need that. We don't need that. Although it did play out very nicely, that head and shoulders and that retrace back down. So daily time frame. I do have another BitTensor chart which you've all seen, but I'm just going to stick with a cleaner one ultimately for now. And what we've had, continuing sort of that downtrend at the moment, with that squeeze in and around that 315 level Gandalf line. But when we spoke on Tuesday, we were running up to resistance in and around the 50 EMA. Wednesday we retested it, and then yesterday we managed to break through it. Hallelujah! Finally, a bit of positivity for BitTensor. The only issue really with BitTensor at the moment is we failed to clear the 200 EMA. And I know I'm moving the goalposts every time, but these are goalposts that have to be done. The resistance levels that are always standing in our way. And what did we run into? We were talking about 368 as being a level of concern for us, which is the 200 EMA. We got to 362 and we've turned around. And the worrying thing about that is we're continuing. If this is a step back down and a conversation down here, to make lower highs. Now, what I would say, in its defense, is that we are just retesting back to the 50 EMA. So that's what I ask of everything else. So why should I be giving it a hard time right now? And I'm not gonna. This candle closes at this position here in sort of 12 hours time. We're saying classic retest of the 50 EMA, and we'll be looking for that move to go. So I'm optimistic that we have had that move from the bottom. 300 and sort of 10. We had beginning of the month. We've managed to sort of gain another 20% from that, and we're moving up towards it. And there have been periods where we've been, up and down in consecutive days. What is interesting is we've not had a vector candle on the daily since the 25th of August. We've not had a green vector candle on the daily since the 12th, so over a month ago. So there's no fury or flurry of activity in terms of the buying and selling. It just seems to be in the traditional or standard realms of those. But we are making that move up. So fair enough. 4-hour time frame. What are we kind of seeing? We are now seeing a bit of a double bottom here. It's almost like a triple bottom, really. There's some sort of bottoming pattern and then the move up. And the move came up to the 200 EMA on the 4-hour time frame. Fine. A little bit of consolidation. Absolutely fine, the consolidation here. And then we've had this move up. Okay. And if this is a rise 2, we should expect a rise 3 whenever that's going to come. Maybe it comes down to the 50 EMA. It's going to become pretty close to negating that rise count if that's the case. But maybe it does come all the way back down here before we have that move and that strength up towards that level. All I'd say on the hourly time frame though, and I'm just assuming is whether or not there's some sort of double top there and we have got our count system sort of wrong. So I wouldn't normally, I normally just ride that one out and just think, oh, it's fine. It's just the peak within there, but there does seem to be two very distinct tops at similar levels and then the price falling away from that one. So just bear that one in mind. We're going back onto the 4-hour when you can see it there. I know it's just wicks, but it does kind of look pretty double top line, neckline being here, and then we've fallen through it. What I would say is, we've still got the 200 and the 50 EMA below us, so plenty of opportunity to catch ourselves. For me, we want to be staying above the sort of the 50 EMA 338 level, and I think if you go on the 1 hour, yeah, there it is, a 200 EMA on the 1 hour's at 338 as well. The 800 is actually slightly higher, but I think we can afford to come back down to here if need be and find a bounce from that one. It doesn't necessarily negate the price we've seen here, and what we've actually seen on the hourly time frame are tests of this 200 EMA and nice bounces from those. So something that could absolutely happen, and we shouldn't necessarily rule it out. I haven't sold anything yet. You know, going to my sort of Gandalf lines, and I'll zoom out a little bit. You know, my lines of concern, etc. I think on Saturday I kind of said it was daily. It was here, 392. You know, if we can't clear that, I'd have to look. I know I've got 100% move if we can't clear 452, but if we can't clear 392, I'd probably think about a sidestep of some sorts. Risk to reward of sidestepping here, it's tough because I'd want to see it. I said this on Tuesday. I'd want to see it drop, you know, past some levels where I knew this was actually falling back down. And by that stage, you're sort of in the 330s, and I would be looking to get back in at the 315s. The risk to reward just probably isn't really there. So I think I'll stick with where we are with that. And there's always an inherent risk for those of you that are feeling like you're missing out on sidesteps towards the end of a cycle, because if alts go and you're in that sidestep, it's a tough position to be in. And someone posted this in Discord today. But, you know, we are in an alt season. We're above 75. We're at 78. So we're expecting some flurry of activity with altcoins. We're expecting there to be some movement. Maybe it's not your altcoin, but we are expecting that to be the case. What I would just stress, though, is when we get above 75, and I said this in Discord, we normally burn hot, but we burn quick. Okay, so, you know, just be mindful of that. August 2022, if you want to know why we burn hot here, this was in a bear market, but this was actually during the change from Ethereum, you know, from proof of work to proof of stake, and there was a lot of activity in and around that. We had a bit of a mini altcoin summer, but generally we get above this, we stay. Obviously, we're now 2021 with a bull market, so maybe we see something there. Maybe that's the exception to prove the rule. But certainly in recent history, we burn above 75, and we normally burn quick. So obviously bear that one in mind. But that being said, Solana has woken up recently, and it is moving very nicely. Now, I think Simon talked about memes aren't moving with it yet, but Solana is doing very well, and it's just looking exactly how we'd want it to behave in terms of, you know, retesting certain EMAs, but then finding support from them and being able to move up. And what I have been impressed with, and I mentioned this again on Tuesday, I'll stop saying that, is we haven't had a vector candle this month. You know, it's just been on steady volume that's been able to get us moving up there on the daily time frame. This is overextended for me, I'll be honest. You know, 6 days in a row of some pretty big climbs. You know, we were at 200 and now we're at 240. I would expect a pullback, let's just say to the 20 EMA at 210. If we're lucky, the 50 EMA, but let's just say by the time it gets there, it's around about 200. So you really, you know, apples and oranges there. But this is the point that, you know, you might want to consider. Well, what's the best play for me if I'm in Bitcoin and I'm wanting to make a move? Ethereum's had a time of, you know, period of just, you know, consolidating, starting to make that move up, needs to breach the all-time high. But what about Solana? How's Solana doing? Is Solana the large cap that we want to move into? And I don't have this, but I probably should. I wonder what the Solana BTC chart looks like. I mean, Solana BTC is looking pretty good. Let's put it on the weekly. So we had, you know, we've had a double bottom, and then we're having this move up. It's above the 50 EMA. It's having a strong move. You know, I suppose I'm just trying to question whether you are feeling courageous enough to go, you know what, ETH's had a decent move. It's gone from 2,000 to 5,000, just under. You know, maybe we run out of better steam. But Solana, which, you know, we know the hype around memes and everything else, and just what it does with its ecosystem, is that the move to sell my Bitcoin into Solana and have that? And it can be a bit daunting because Solana's had such a strong move this entire cycle. Oops, it's supposed to be an hour. You know, you look at that move there for Solana, fantastic move, and it's never really kind of bottomed. But we have had some sort of retracement. We are below, you know, the value of Solana versus BTC for the best part of, I mean, almost 2 years. We're still below that. But I suppose actually now I see that and I've zoomed out. What I would say, I'm going to zoom in once I get rid of these, is are we running potentially then into some form of resistance? You know, is all of these bottoms here? I know we've probably just stuck our head above it, but we're on the weekly time frame. Let's see how it closes. Are we running into some sort of resistance there. Maybe we expect some sort of pullback from it. But this would be one that if you're looking to play the game over the next couple of months, maybe have a look at how Solana's doing versus your BTC rather than Ethereum and then going from Ethereum into Solana. I haven't looked at it today, but maybe that's something that I might consider looking into. Back on Solana on sort of the lower time frames, I just think it's looking great. I honestly do. And you know, we kind of say when patterns range, we don't rarely leave vector candles behind on the lower time frames, but actually Solana has it's the exception to the rule. We you know, since the beginning of August, we've left plenty of large swathes here. Now, what I would say, and maybe I'm gonna just be proved ultimately wrong from this, but that's a pretty steep angle on the 4-hour time frame without any pullback. You know, we've not had a retest of 50 EMA for the best part of a week, and we have got pretty far away from the 10 and the 20 as well. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I would expect it to happen, and it'll probably be the second after I buy some Solana, but I would expect to see this come back down. Normally I say to the 50 EMA, and then I always find out that it stays a little bit lower, but you know, even a pullback of $20 to 220 is going to clear these vectors. Even going to take this little vector candle out down here and leave us with ultimately something to go. I'm just wondering if there's the problem with drawing a fib level is we don't know what the top is at the moment. You know, if it turns around now, that's an if. You know, we don't really know if that's the case. I just wonder if we do this and there's some extensions. Do any of these extensions? No, none of the extensions really confirm to us that they're playing out. So I think we'll just leave the fibs. We'll just have to wait and be patient on that. But I'd have to expect a pullback on Solana with the strength of the moves that it's had. That's just, you know, the gut that I'm always going to go with. But other than that, I think it is generally looking pretty good. In terms of other ones, just try and keep these really high level because I want to try and close it off. Casper, ranging. Not really doing too much, battling with that 50 EMA, but if other altcoins are anything to go by, maybe we do find that strength to get through. But even if we do, 200's there. And since July, when we made a local high of 12, has just been sort of falling back down. So it's got to get through 9 cents and 2. It's got to get through 10 cents, you know, clearing these levels to convince us that we've got a change in trend. XRP, so strong move up, correction back down to 270, and then we're starting to build through again, a little bit like Solana actually. Strength getting through those EMAs and that 50 EMA, no necessity for increased volume in doing that there. The 50, the 10, and the 20 are all sitting on top of each other around about 290 at the moment. Any form of pullback, I think that's going to be a strong level for it to bounce back down to. Litecoin, what would we have there? Double bottom, yep. Okay, played up Kobo back down, nice. But then actually, you know, we got to 330 before it came back. It's another Kobo, really. But we are above the 50 EMA. We've seen some volume keeping us above that over the last few days. I think, you know, just wait to see how the rest of the market goes. Link. I mean, Link's has got a pretty strong up angle again, very similar to Solana. It is above the 50 EMA. It hasn't actually retested it, a bit like Ethereum. But look at all of those green vector candles there. And, you know, let me just draw this. Where is it? You can say that it's broken through this trend line. If we do it on the 4 hour, I'm sure it looked a lot better. Yeah, there you go. And it's looking quite good. Broke through Kobo, off we go. So looking strong. But for me, when I look at it on the daily, I just think it's such a steep angle over the last week. I would expect a pullback and, you know, maybe it gets as low as this base here, 22, for a proper retest of this. We'll have to wait and see. There's a lot of vectors there. I can't remember what the reason behind this strength in going through. It showed immense strength there. Whether or not it leaves these behind, I don't follow it enough to say, but you know, we would argue that probably not. Just rattling through some of these. So Coinbase just got above the 50 MA. Still got a gap to fill. Not sure earnings there. Circle had a day yesterday, 20% almost change in price, but it's only back to the 20 EMA. So we'll have to just wait and see where that one ends up. But I think the market's going to open today. It's ever so slightly higher, 135. MicroStrategy, What am I on here? What's that? It's the weekly. But yeah, that's right. It's back on the 50 EMA. It's resting there. Not lost it yet, but just need to see how that one's going to sit. Nvidia, strong candle up there. Tesla finally found its feet again. It's broken out through that compression. So I think that's probably everything we need to go through. I think generally the markets are looking relatively healthy. Bitcoin certainly is. How Bitcoin and Ethereum sort of, pace each other out in terms of general climbs up. My gun to the head decision would be it looks like Ethereum's going to outstrip Bitcoin, but just don't rule it out. I know we're only in day 12 of September, but one, don't be surprised for a sharp pullback, but also don't be surprised if Bitcoin dominance pulls back up. We didn't cover Bitcoin dominance really, did we? Weekly time, not daily time frame. Yeah, we consolidated, we came up, rejected from the 50 EMA, and today losing the 10 EMA. We just need to break this 57.90 level. And then I'm going to have to say we have to break the 57.38, 34 level. Doesn't sound like much, but in terms of percentage, they're big amounts. I think we just need to be very cautious with that. And then we've got that move, that pretty much freedom move down to 55%, which would be a hell of a move. We'll really see the likes of Ethereum and probably Solana flying from those. So, however you want to balance your risk in terms of where you want to put your pot, doesn't mean that Bitcoin's not going to go down. We're talking about dominance here. Just other assets may climb faster. And that's all it is to look at. So I think that's it. We were just about 30 minutes and not too bad there. Just remember, it's a weekend, guys. We never know what's going to happen. Typically, we see Bitcoin pumping through the weekend and then correcting on the Monday. Sorry, crypto. And then we've got FOMC next week, the one that everyone's been waiting for. I mean, God, if Powell doesn't cut the rates, then it's going to be burning in the streets. But yeah, wait and see. So I'll be around on the weekend as always. Just posting in the trading charts and all of that kind of stuff. Let me know if you have any questions or any concerns you're having. And other than that, enjoy the rest of your Friday and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Speak to you all soon now. Cheers.